Viewer discretion is advised.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Noodle Wrestling Podcast After Dark. We are continuing on our journey talking about the documentary, The Rise and Fall of ECW. This will be part 2 of most definitely 3 parts
Most
because
definitely 3.
we love to gab, especially about ECW. I'm learning so much. I finally know the full tea of what happened. I'm both shocked, thrilled, and excited for the next layer in Paul Heyman's career, especially after we're coming off of him being inducted to the Hall of Fame and WWE, which was a thrill, which we did an episode on that. If you didn't watch it, please go do so. I basically cried the whole time. It's totally fine.
It's totally fine. I just want to do a little I just want to say a little thank you for sticking with us, because I do realize we started this series and then just completely did other things.
We were like, bye,
So,
Sorry.
but in our defense, it was WrestleMania 40. We were busy. There was a lot of stuff going on. So there was other stuff we thought you might want to talk about before. But we're back on track. We're gonna see this through to the end. And we might have a little surprise as far as a new to wrestling that isn't a Monday Night Raw or a pay-per-view in WWE. So
I know,
we'll
I'm really excited.
All right.
It's in the works. Things are in the works. Ideas, plots, plans, schemes.
Always.
So, okay. So where we last left off, we talked about how Raven literally crucified somebody.
Right.
Never forget. And I will say this documentary, this is just like total my own opinion. I like both loved and hated how this was put together. Like no
I
shade,
get that.
because it was kind of like it like didn't necessarily have like a flow. Like randomly, like yes, there was like beginning, middle, and end, but like randomly it would be like talking about like the pay-per-view timeline, and then suddenly it would be like who the Dudley boys were, which is great. I want to know who they are, but it's like, why are we doing this now? Like out of the blue, like talking about who they were. So I feel like it could have been maybe structured better.
Yeah, and I feel like we go into a lot of like the feuds of like ECW, or like specific feuds that are happening, which is like fun. But I feel like, as far as like, if we're just talking about like of a company, I don't know if I need every feud to be as detailed in its explanation. I mean, I eat it up, so I love it. But I will say, like, as far as like, you're right. It'll like put you on a track of like, okay, we're telling this like story of the company, and then all of a sudden we're like, okay, hey, so this one pay-per-view had this one feud sometime, and this happened, and you're just like, oh, okay, duly noted, but where is that in the grand scheme?
Right. So that, I'm just saying, will affects the flow of the episode, just because we're going in, but I will say, and no one asked me, in my opinion, if I would have done it, I would have done like the rise and fall of ECW, just like not brass tacks, but like more like basic facts, and then maybe done a separate documentary on like legendary feuds of ECW.
Right.
Because also then it probably wouldn't have been 3.5 hours long. Like, and you would have been able to like more attention span focus on like the meat and the good stuff. But no one asked for my opinion, just a thought. So speaking of pay-per-views, Taz says we were not known at a national level and we wanted to be, and the only way to do that is through pay-per-views, at least in the trajectory of where they're going, because eventually they'll want to be on like national television. But right now it made sense for them to go the pay-per-view route. Paul says we had to make more money, we had to make more revenue to stay alive, because we were up against billion-dollar corporations trying to hammer us. We needed ammunition to fight against those machines, i.e. WCW and WWE. We needed to go to other arenas, we needed to expand, because without expansion, we would have lost everything. Because they also need to be able to pay their talent, which we know ends up being a big problem in ECW eventually. But the fans, as they do, were the ones that really pushed to get them a pay-per-view by calling, writing letters. Paul basically said berating people.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, sound completely. They believed in ECW and it was their program and they were our army. But Paul's like, I thought this was so funny. He's like, we couldn't get on the air because people thought we were actually fighting. Like, they did not think it was real, like, quote unquote wrestling, like WWE, WCW. They thought it was more like Ultimate Fighter
Right.
type of thing. And there was apparently this like huge push in the United States at that time to like not have that on television, I guess, because of the hashtag violence. I don't.
Right. I think because of it's the nature of what the product was,
Mhm.
that it, and because it was so reality like based, people had a hard time like separating it in the same way that people can like take or watch like WWE, even if you're like casual and know that it's like fake or scripted.
Fully.
I think because of the nature of the programming, people were like, I don't know if this is like for fun or not. Like so
Right.
right. And
I think like
I can understand that. Like
yeah.
if you don't know anything about them, or just like um if you're not really educated on wrestling generally, it does look different. Like they do look different if you were to put the products side by side. So,
Fully.
I can understand where that discrepancy came from.
Yeah. I have a question. I always knew like growing up, I guess I because I didn't watch wrestling, it was just I was it just to me was common knowledge that it was like quote unquote fake or like not real.
Right.
So I never really thought about it. But like you as a kid watching it, like was there a moment where you're like you
Unsure.
yeah,
I mean, probably when I was like
little,
younger,
right?
yeah. But I think my parents did a good enough job of just being like, because there is a time in every young wrestling fan's life where they are sat down by their parents and they were like, this is not real, don't do this in our
Oh, to
house.
your brother.
Right.
Yes.
So they, most wrestling fans have that conversation, so
Mhm.
it probably broke the illusion right around the time I had that conversation.
I see. Okay. That was just curious.
Yeah, no worries.
Um But either way, Hugh Pinero, who is the president of Request TV, what I've never heard of in my life,
No, it's came and gone, and
came and went.
your Napster, your whatever, it came and
Hmm.
gone.
Yep. Listened to the fans and finally put ECW on the air. Then this kind of seemed like a random like bloop in Revere, Massachusetts. And this is when Axel Rotten was supposed to wrestle but couldn't make it. The replacement falsified the documents, lied about his age, and basically like got his ass handed to him, like beaten
Yeah.
within an inch of his life. It
So
was, oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, so yeah, so it was Axel Rotten was supposed to like wrestle in this event. Um, the replacement was a child, which no one knew. And he got in the ring with New Jack. New Jack he has a whole dark side of the ring. It says New Jack was involved in the mass transit incident on November 23rd, 1996 in Revere, Massachusetts.
Mm-hmm.
Massachusetts, the Gangstas were scheduled to face Devon Dudley and Axel Rotten. Rotten missed the show and was replaced with Eric Kules, an untrained 17-year-old who convinced Booker Paul Heyman that he was 21 and had been trained by veteran Killer Kowalski. Kules requested that New Jack blade him during the match, but the incision was made incorrectly, causing excessive bleeding. Kules was hospitalized as a result, eventually receiving 50 stitches. This is the incident. New Jack was charged with aggravated assault stemming from the incident, but was acquitted because Kulas had asked New Jack to cut him. Kulas subsequently sued New Jack and ECW for damages in July 1998, but lost the case. Kulas died in May 12th, 2002, at the age of 22 due to complications from a gastric bypass surgery.
Oh,
Oh,
oh, oh.
not where I knew thought that was going. But so that's a little bit
Ooh.
more on that incident. So yeah, so I knew he had gotten in trouble.
I'm really mad at myself that the biggest shock for me was that someone at the age of 22 got gastric bypass.
Yeah, I don't know.
22? 90s diet culture. Wrong.
Right.
That's horrible and that's
Hmm.
literally insane. But it's like again, if you're getting in the ring, you're getting beaten up and you have to like be prepared for that. I'm so curious if there was like actual document. I mean, it said falsified documents. So I guess they're talking about like he must
He
have
showed a
signed
fake ID.
waivers.
He
But like
he
do you
had
think
a
he
fake
signed
ID. He signed. He probably he Heyman probably asked for his ID. It was like, here you go. I doubt you need really
Right.
any more other than like
Right.
to sign waivers. And if you're a legal adult, you just sign the waivers. You don't need to necessarily put it through a whole, lawyer or anything.
Oh
If you
yeah.
think you're illegal, if he thinks you're a legal adult, he's just gonna give you the thing and be like, here you go, sign.
Right. My only hesitation was that like I feel like Paul Heyman like at this time like rarely dealt in paperwork because like everyone's like, yeah, we didn't actually have like a paper contract. We just like shook hands. So I'm
Right.
like, did he? But I get it says documentation, so I'm assuming that he must have signed something
Right.
because like that's to me like,
Crazy.
yeah, well,
Well, that whole incident's wild. So
so crazy. But as a result of that, even though New Jack and ECW got off on all charges, Paul said pay-per-view networks that were scared of us in the first place now wouldn't even come close to us. They canceled our pay-per-view that was scheduled for 1997 on Christmas Eve of 1996.
right.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah.
Um,
So yeah, this happened in November. Probably took them a month to like actually hash out the details, and then
right.
they were like, no.
Just kidding.
Right.
So crazy. But Paul says I begged and pleaded and cajoled and cried and did everything I could to get us back on the air, and it worked.
That's
So,
that
and
Heyman hustle.
I was just gonna say, if anyone can talk their way back into something, it is Paul Motormouth Heyman. I don't know.
Yo, honestly.
Smooth Talker Heyman. I don't know. But so on April 13th, 1997 at 9 p.m., they had their very first pay-per-view, which was Barely Legal, it was called.
Yep.
Yes.
Really legal.
Love the name Barely Legal. That
Oh yeah,
is
yeah, yeah. They had some good pay-per-view names.
so, and Paul says I would have taken a Wednesday night at 3 a.m. live time slot if I had to do it from a parking garage in the South Bronx. I did not care. If I knew if you let us, we'll give you something special and we'll give you something different. So
Yes.
I also love this Joey Styles, who I love. I love
I
Joey
love Joey
Styles.
Styles. Yeah.
I mean, he's amazing because he also looks, and I mean this in the nicest way possible, so unassuming. Like he's
Mm-hmm.
just like like a smaller white guy with glasses, like kind of, and
Just
he's
yeah.
just like has the sauce. Like he just
Mm-hmm.
has that something that like every time he says anything, I'm like,
I
yeah,
get it. Yeah.
I'm hype, yeah. And he like,
Which is amazing. And definitely a one of those instances where like Paul sees something in people that like other people don't necessarily see.
yeah,
You know what I mean? That's definitely like one of those instances where he was just like, "No, I like you. I like what you do." And so we're
yeah,
gonna
like
give you the opportunity to like be the voice of ECW, which is
and
pretty cool.
was smart. I mean, it's like Paul has like a radar or
He
something. Like
does, I
he hears like
swear.
whoa, 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 whoa when he gets like closer to
Closer to
someone who
like
we know is gonna be
is like
like,
talented. Yeah,
yeah,
you're
like
not
I don't
wrong.
know, some like a homing beacon. But Joey Styles opens the pay-per-view with like love to the fans.
Hmm.
And is like, we couldn't have done this without you. The reason we're here is because of you. In like his Joey Styles way. Like he's so cool, whatever. And then he goes, and to the haters, the detractors, you're about to get outed because you're all fans anyway. You all bought a ticket. You're all watching this right now. You all have ECW merch. Your Bubba like goes on this whole
Hmm.
thing and then he's like, and like, let's get to it. And it's so great.
Amazing.
Then they jump, which I was so excited to see this. They jump to the crossover episode
Yes.
before the pay-per-view airs. So they
Hmm.
like kind of like tease the pay-per-view and then they go back in time. So they jump, which we did this like not that long
Yes.
ago,
That's
which
why
is such a
I love
thrill.
this part. Yeah, because it's just this is like a full circle moment for the show because we have
Right.
literally already, if you haven't already, you can go back and listen to them. The ECW, like the original ECW invasion in 1996. You can watch those episodes, but it was cool like coming across it in like a different context. To see the
Yeah.
ECW kind of perspective on that.
Yes, because at the time I was watching it, like watching, the Raw episode, like I'd never heard of ECW, which like I knew a little bit, but not really anything. So I literally was like complete, like removed third party
Right.
perspective. Like I was like, I don't even know any of these people. And now going back and thinking about it, I'm like, this is not that I didn't think it was cool in the first place. Like I thought it was amazing, but now I'm like, this is the coolest. Like they're just
Right.
amazing. But they do the crossover episode to promote their very first pay-per-view. And Vince says, I will say Vince, I have a lot of feelings about Vince, but the whole documentary, I felt like he was so like kind of honest and like complimentary to ECW.
Right, because he knows what
Right.
ECW did for him and his
Right.
company.
And he's honest about it, which
I
because
agree.
Eric Bischoff, I wanted to stab my laptop every time he said anything.
And it is that behavior is exactly why during Paul Heyman's like Hall of Fame acceptance speech 20 years later, he's still like, no, ECW is or WCW is trash, and we all know it.
Which
like,
I
so
mean,
but it's because Eric Bischoff gives he takes and gives no flowers.
no,
No,
sorry.
and that's his thing, that's his move, that's his power play, that's how he does business, that's how he thinks like you get ahead in business, period, point blank. And it's was really proven by the WWF's approach to ECW that there is more than one way to do business for the betterment of the wrestling business as a whole, not
Right.
just the betterment of your own company.
Yep.
But yeah,
I think Vince
that's
says
Eric
that at some
Bischoff
point.
in a nutshell.
Yeah, I think Vince says that at one point, like, I did it because it was good for the business, not
Right.
like for WWE, like specifically, but good for the business. But like, yeah, and it really, and we'll get to it like later, but I was thinking when I was watching this came out in 2004.
Right.
And like, so at that time, I couldn't remember when WCW went under.
2001.
And they went under 2 months after ECW. And here is Eric Bischoff on this 2004 documentary, high on the hog, talking about he's better, ECW could have never competed, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, you also floundered and died 2 months later.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
you're
I
so
mean, at that
crazy.
point, I don't know how involved Eric Bischoff was. He
Right,
gets
that's
like
true.
removed and comes back and then leaves again. So I don't know where Eric was in that whole process. I'm sure he
Oh,
would love to distance himself from the demise of WCW, even though he was directly a
responsible.
cause. The thing that's like crazy is like ECW ran out of money.
Mhm.
Like they just couldn't they just did not have the influx of money to keep the ship going.
Mhm.
WCW had the keys to the kingdom and fumbled the bag.
They
They
did.
had all of the money. They had a billionaire backing their every move, and you still fumbled the bag.
That's
You
crazy.
still only lasted 5 years. So ECW lasted longer. Started in 1993, made it all the way to 2001. They, as far as longevity goes, you lost. Like you
So
were not
crazy.
as viable a product for as long, and you're just bitter. You're just
I'm
bitter.
so bitter. Oh God. Every time he said anything with that like little shitty grin, I was like,
No, it's
just
but the thing is like it's
so
just like
much.
you he I cannot stand Eric Bischoff.
I can't
I
either.
all of his best ideas were taken. They were taken from somewhere else.
Yep.
NWO was taken from Japan. The cruiserweights were taken from ECW. Like all of the stars that were like established in WCW were taken from WWF. Like you
Mm-hmm.
didn't create anything. You've
Mm-hmm.
just shuffled all of these people with all of your money and then put them all in one place and be like, yeah, I made something until they all realized that they all couldn't be the star and started turning on each other. Like, this is
Yep.
like, it's crazy. Anyway, but this
So
is not the,
wild.
the Bash WCW episode.
Sorry. Yeah.
No,
I
we
mean,
listen, there's a rise and
one
fall of
day.
WCW also. We will get there.
Ooh, I can't wait because I'm just gonna rip it to
Yeah.
shreds. Anyway, so Vince says there's obviously something there when we acquired their talent, ECW chants would break out in the crowd. So there was obviously something to this. And literally also Vince, again, just being honest, we took their talent and people were like, yeah, ECW, there they are. So
Right.
they do a crossover episode. Um Eric goes, it wasn't surprising, Eric Bischoff, and I literally wrote whatever goofy. Um
You're not wrong. You're
moving
not
right
wrong.
along. Jerry also, I'm sorry, Jerry the King Lawler really irritated me in this segment too. Cause why? I just don't get why you have to, whatever. Um Jerry literally goes, why would we as a company give valuable airtime to our competition? It's a question that has never been answered. And this is when Vince says, I thought it would just be good for the business.
As a whole.
Right. And what drives me crazy is the flip-flop behavior of Jerry, in the sense that, like, he's one of those in the same vein as, like, Eric Bischoff. It's like they're not even in the same wave, as on the same level, blah, 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 and then he's saying, like, they're our competition. So which is it? Like, you don't
Right.
even think
Are you
about them. They're
acknowledging them as competition, or are you not? Like, what's the deal?
yeah, and, like, you tell on yourself sometimes a little bit. Like, you're saying whatever, that's a whole other thing, but Jerry says they had an arrogance about them, like they really thought they were better than the WWE and could stand in the ring with our guys. Um, and he just says, I just remember how small they were, like miniature wrestlers running around. I said Taz looked better on the Lucky Charms box, and he actually came after me.
Right.
So that little sequence where Taz goes after Jerry apparently was not planned.
Right. And
Taz was like,
yeah, and they like go into, they talk about it, like that the ECW roster like went into that like as a unit. They
Yep,
went in step together, and
yep,
like I could see how that could be taken like the wrong way. You know what I mean?
mm-hmm,
Just as far as like being in an established locker room and then having other people like come in. But I also
mm-hmm,
see it from the ECW perspective, where it's like they and Taz said it in the earlier in the documentary. He's just like, we didn't know what the reception of us was going to be, so it was
right,
safer for us to stick together. Like, we didn't know if they were going to come in and like jump us. Like, it was safety in numbers. Like, of course we were going to
mm-hmm,
stick together.
yeah,
So I don't know. And Jerry does like, see, the thing is, like, Jerry does so much to like help them, but
right,
also does so much to like talk. See, this is one of those things where it just feels like he's still in character, even though he's like not.
right.
Like, I
Yeah,
don't know.
I don't know. It just, I was like, you don't have to be like that. Like, again, I don't, whatever.
Especially
But
after the fact. Like,
that's what I was gonna say. I was like, I just, there's literally no point in being
mhm.
so nasty about it now, because they're gone. Like, they're whatever.
They were your coworkers now.
Yeah. So,
Most of their roster is now just at this point in 2004, like just in WWF or WWE
yeah.
at this point. So
Yep. It also cracked me up, speaking of that, when, because Bubba Ray really like has some deep cuts in terms of like he really talks like the truth about Paul Heyman, and they're still great friends. Like, he was there when he got inducted to the Hall of Fame. He was
yeah,
one of the first person he hugged. So like,
Bubba
I
has a
just,
very popular wrestling podcast also. So
oh, love that.
he's just a genuinely good talker.
Yeah. He like, but even like the things he said about Paul, where he was like, I think Paul was just like a really like bad business person.
Yeah,
Like, someone might take to heart, but Paul's like, I don't know, could be true. Who knows? Like, and they're still friends. Like, I just love that
right.
relationship is so honest and like
Well, those are like that's how you know they're like actually friends. You know what I mean?
100%, 100%.
Because like I don't trust anybody that is just only singing my praises. Like I'm
Yeah, I
sorry,
hate
but
you.
like if no, literally, so like if like your friend can't be like level with you and just be like, yo, you suck at this, then like
Swear to
what are
God.
you doing?
Swear to
Like
God.
I
It's
don't
so
know.
true. Um, and also, speaking of unscripted things too, apparently Sabu falling off the R was which we already knew. You could
We knew.
clock that. I literally said that, which we guessed, like, because
I was
it's
like,
obvious, because the R went one way and he went the other, and
mhm.
he was caught. I don't know if he was just supposed to stand there or he was actually supposed to
I think he
jump,
was supposed to jump, but
but he
it just
fell.
he just fell off the R.
Mm-hmm. Loved that confirmation. But it's so funny because they, Jerry's talking about how it was like, I don't know why we did this, blah, blah, blah. But all of the wrestlers who went to Raw said nothing but positive things, that they had
Right.
such an amazing experience. It was so great for them, for WWE. And Tommy Dreamer brought up a great point. He was like, that invasion started the Attitude Era because it showed anything could happen on Raw.
Right.
Anything.
He's like,
Another
well,
wrestling organization comes in. People are like coming through the crowd. He says at one point, like, Sandman, the reason Stone Cold gets to drink beer on TV is because Sandman did it first. Like, he did all these like analogies, and I was like, oh, oop.
yeah.
Which
Yeah,
again,
it's really it's hard not to like just
draw the comparisons,
draw
draw the
the
lines.
correlations. Yeah.
Right. Taz says WWE was not doing that fast-paced, aggressive style wrestling, and I love him because he's always like, and I feel, and this is just debate, I feel that
Right, you got to remember he is currently at this point a WWE contracted commentator. So
right. Oh my God, I love him so
where
much.
in 2004 he is working for SmackDown as one of the commentators. So
Yes, yes. And he's a New Yorker. And I
and
just
he's a New
always feel
Yorker.
like try the tri-state and Philly and everyone, they're always like, what I'm saying, but do whatever you want.
Right,
Like,
no,
or
literally,
feel however you want to feel. You know what I mean?
we're not gonna speak for you, but
I'm
I'm
going
just
to
gonna
speak.
tell I am gonna tell you what I think.
Right. This
Because
and there's that
I'm physically I cannot not tell you what I think. So like,
it's so true. I just anytime Taz said anything, I was like,
amazing.
but he was
No,
like,
yeah, I agree.
I feel Paul Heyman created the hardcore style with ECW, brought it to the pay-per-view audience, and then like people, other organizations kind of
Adopted.
peeked away. Yeah. So then we really get into the ECW pay-per-view, Barely Legal. Again, love the name.
Guys.
Devon Dudley. Ooh, yes.
So we are going to do a regular New to Wrestling episode on Barely Legal 1997. So look out for that. I'm not sure when, as far as timeline goes. We have guests coming up that I need to schedule around, but there will be an episode where we deep dive into Barely Legal 1997.
You guys, what a
I
thrill.
think Kelsey's gonna lose her mind.
I really am. I really am.
So be on the lookout for that.
When I was watching this documentary, I was like, I hope we watch that at some point. Like that just seems, but the time, like you said, the timing is apropos because it literally is the exact same time where we're watching the regular show. So it just
Right.
makes sense. So
Yeah,
do a
so
little,
the New to Wrestling that we have scheduled to record next week is the April 14th, 1997 edition of Monday Night Raw. And this pay-per-view takes place on April 13th. So
crazy.
why not?
Gotta see it. So Devon Dudley, who I also love, said we knew that we had to score big because if we didn't, it would be the end of ECW. We had to put everything on the line. The energy in the locker room was so intense. We were scared to death, but we knew we couldn't mess up. Because like they had to make an impact. But
And they had like financially put everything into this pay-per-view. It was sink or swim.
So crazy. And they swam.
Mm-hmm.
Paul says it was the holy grail to us. We had fought so many battles for this. And I think Tommy Dreamer and maybe one of the wrestler also says something about it being like, to them, they called it the holy grail, like that night.
Yeah.
For them. Ron Buffon says viewers' choice basically wanted to take control of the product a little bit. They wanted to put their own producer, their own director, and Paul, to his credit, stood with the people who brought him to the dance. And Paul's threatened to cancel the show. And he was like, I was going to fight for the people who stuck with me. So Joey Styles,
Right.
number one, they were like, he can't do the whole pay-per-view by himself. Like he just can't do it. And he was like, yes, he can.
Yes, he can. He does it
Yes,
every
he can.
night. What do you mean he can't?
Yeah, like, and Ron Buffon is a producer too. He's been producing ECW, so he knows what to
The
do. Like
product
he
is.
just
Yeah.
yes. So to me that makes sense. And the minute I get, because again we'll get into like Paul being like a little bit he clutches ECW a little too close to the chest and can't like delegate.
Right.
But also I understand like if you have a formula that's working, the time to try something new is not the night of your first pay-per-view. Like
Correct.
I wouldn't, that just seems crazy to
Correct.
me. So
that's aces and places, baby. Like
there
sorry.
you go. That's what I'm saying.
And it just goes like just that is just what we know of Paul Heyman, to just be like ride or die, everybody eats. That man, just to get yourself on that platform and to be willing to risk that platform so that it can be done correctly by the people that have made the show what it is it's not an easy thing to do. To literally know that this show, like your entire company is riding on this one show, and to still be like, I have to throw my weight around to get these people the opportunity that they deserve, which is, it's crazy.
Yeah. Paul makes me want to be like not as afraid to talk to human beings. So
right?
and just stand my ground. So crazy. So Rob Van Dam wasn't originally supposed to be in ECW's pay-per-view, and he felt some type of way about it. He was thrown in at the last minute and he was furious, sweetie. Like he was
Right.
like, I was not happy about it. And Lance Storm is who he was fighting, and Lance Storm was like, yeah, it was, crazy because I've been like, kind of practicing with this other guy, and suddenly they throw in the Rob Van Dam at the last minute, and he didn't seem in good spirits starting off. And
Right.
like they showed clips of this match, and it is so crazy. Rob Van Dam is just insane,
He's so
and
good.
he's just got those big meaty thighs, and he's got that leg, and like there's something so amazing about him. But he goes, and then after I beat Lance Storm, I just got on the mic to vent my feelings because that was the freedom that ECW allowed me to have. And
Right.
he basically, he was like, Rob Van Dam is not second to anything. Like, I had to come out here, like I wasn't even going to be here, but I'm not second fiddle to anyone, so
Right.
here I am.
No, basically he was just like he's like I sold out to myself by wrestling tonight. He's like I am nobody's like second choice. And then he basically was like I came out here because beating Lance Storm means RVD is worth more money here and elsewhere. He's like I did it for me. So don't think I came out here to like just entertain you. I was like no, I was slighted, so I came out to get my piece and I'm going to do what I got to do. And you're like go off, King.
Go
Go
off,
off.
King. Listen, love the honesty. I'm not mad, and he put on such a crazy show.
Right. And he
Love that guy,
does
and
consistently.
he do. Then they also talk about the grudge match between Taz and Sabu,
Amazing.
which they obviously promoted during the crossover episode by Sabu falling off the R. But I guess Taz was saying for about a whole year, Taz repeatedly called out Sabu, literally like cursing, like get the out here. He said he did everything physically and emotionally to get him to come out, but Sabu refused to face him. He called him out, cursed him out. And he says, so this was like, and also like it was so crazy because I'm pretty sure like the lights go out and then the lights come on and they're just both there, like in the I would
Amazing.
have died. I would have died. Like
Mm-hmm.
I would have. It's so crazy. So, and then Taz says we made each other in that match. Like
Correct.
it was an insane match, and they both. So Taz wins the match, and Sabu lifts his hand. Like he gets up and he lifts his hand like at the end,
Mm-hmm.
and they walk around. And I love those moments because like, do I love when the girlies fight and hate each other? Of course, love. But
Yes.
like I also
Like
respect when a wrestler's like, I've been beaten. Like,
right. Well, yeah, or like when you gain a respect like through the course of a match. Like, but if you went
yes. Oh,
into it like
fully.
absolutely, you know what I mean? They went into it like earlier in the pay-per-view, Taz goes like, we did not like each other. Like,
Mm-mm.
we did not like each
Hated
other.
each other.
Um,
Yeah,
but they could go out and put on a banger, and like you got to respect that, regardless
really.
of like your personal feelings.
Yeah.
So
So awesome. And then they had, which again, I love Stevie Richards so much. I love him and I think
LOL.
he's so cute. But so they had a three-way dance, they called it, between Terry Funk the Sandman and Stevie Richards. And this was crazy. The winner of this match went on later in the same night
Uh-huh.
to fight Raven for the title,
Correct.
which is crazy. Like, which is crazy. So
Mm-hmm.
Stevie was like, I was so honored. I couldn't believe it. Like, I had this moment where I was like, what am I doing here? Because, like, Terry Funk is a legend. And Sandman is an icon in the ECW. He's like the soul of ECW. And then there's like me. Like, why am I here? And he was like, I was just so honored to be included and like be on the match. And I guess like Terry said something to him beforehand, like, hey, we're gonna have a great match. Cause Terry was like, or Stevie was like, what am I doing here? He was like,
Right.
we're just gonna go out there and have a great match. Like, don't worry about it. And Terry Funk wins. I love the idea of this storyline. Um because obviously Terry Funk is in his 50s at this point.
Right.
He wins this three-way dance. He goes on to face Raven for the title, and they made it this thing where Raven's like, you remind me of my father. He was a drunk and I'm going to beat the shit out of you and like
Mm-hmm.
whatever. And Paul says it was an quote unquote impossible dream taking place before your very eyes because he wins. He
Right.
beats Raven. Terry Funk in his, I think he was like 52 at this point, wins the ECW heavyweight title after wrestling two matches, one against two other people. the other one against the heavyweight. Like, it's just so crazy.
It's
And
crazy.
Paul's like, so their very first pay-per-view, Terry Funk is like the winner. And Paul's like, you know, people are like, oh, he's aged out, he's washed out, he can't possibly do this. But and so we made him the champion, and
The impossible dream is
the
what Paul
impossible
called it.
dream. Yeah, for all he did for us, he deserved it. He truly deserved it.
Right.
I
Because
love that.
we know, like, in the early days of ECW, Terry was the only like legend from that era that would touch ECW with a 10-foot pole. He
Yeah.
was the only one. So for the legitimacy that he brought, Paul felt like, you know, he deserved to have his flowers, and this was him giving him his flowers.
Which I love.
Because it cannot be understated the legitimacy that he brought to ECW because of his background up to that point. Because you needed to have those kind of like pillars in the wrestling world. Otherwise, it was going to be all too easy to kind of discredit ECW as like a gimmick or like a, you know, a one-trick pony. The legitimacy that Terry brought in all of his like lineage and his whole family and that whole thing allowed ECW to be like multifaceted, which is important when you're trying to entertain an audience of different people. So
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think this is amazing. Like, just a great storyline, especially because, you know, we're talking about like wrestlers who get like they get to a certain age, and I was like, okay, we're done with them now. Like, it's time to retire to the commentary table or like whatever. And to make him the very first like pay-per-view champion is so outrageous and amazing. And like, obviously, it was felt because the crowd is going crazy. Terry Funk is like in the crowd, he's covered in blood, he's sweating, he's crying. Like, it's this whole thing. And they say this, I love the Transformer blew literally 10 minutes after the pay-per-view ended.
10 seconds, baby.
Oh, I thought it
Like,
was 10 minutes.
no, that he goes, Tommy Dreamer literally goes, if we were on air for 3 more seconds, we would have lost the feed.
Maybe I just blacked out because I was like, there's no possible way 10 seconds. That's crazy. They literally were like, I'm sorry, but they were literally like Beyonce the Super Bowl. Like, after she finished her halftime show, the power went out and they couldn't restart the game because the football stadium itself was like, no, that's plenty. We've seen enough.
That's enough. Yeah.
I don't need to see the rest of the sport ball. I'm
absolutely
good.
No, literally.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. They said like the building just couldn't handle all of the power that they were using to put on the show.
It's so funny.
Which
I
is
just
crazy.
love them. Again, it's like I just picture like an old like generator in the back that like someone has to like whack with a tool every once in a while to get it to go. Like, that's just what I envision.
Right.
But everyone's saying like the fans reacted as if their home team had won the World Series, like feral, freaking out. Everyone was so emotional. Stevie Richards like, I kept crying. Paul said we all cried because we had worked so hard to get there.
Right.
Now, then they get into Raven decides to leave ECW. And I guess he asked Tommy Dreamer if he wanted to go, because I guess he went to WCW.
He does, yes.
Yes, and he called Tommy and asked him if he wanted to come, like as if they were gonna like hold hands and skip and go there. Which I guess did happen, but
it happened a lot as far as
with
like
other wrestlers. Yeah. And it's funny because Tommy's like, and Raven was like upset because he thought I told Paul that he had called me, and I literally have never told anyone until this moment right now that's happening. I've never told anyone that Raven tried to call me and convince me to go with him to WCW, which is crazy.
Right.
I love him so much. Because also, again, he has that like just almost like deadpan where he's like, I've never told anyone that until right now, this moment, now o'clock. It's so great. But Paul said it was not only a creative disappointment, it was also a business disappointment. But that night, this is wild. That night is the very first night, we talked about this in the last episode, because the thing about Tommy Dreamer is that he never beat Raven. Something always happened. He always got so close. So on Raven's Last Night Wrestling, they have Tommy Dreamer beat Raven. Crowd screaming, freaking out. Everyone's like so happy, whatever. Lights go out. Lights come back on, and there's Jerry Lawler in the ring. Why? I literally was so shocked. I had to pause it and be like, what?
Because it's the continuation of them coming to Raw.
I know, but I just was not expecting that, especially because
Mm-hmm.
of all of the smack he talks about ECW, and then here he is. But it was literally so he could get like his licks in. This was crazy. So also, Jim Cornette was there. Jim
Yeah.
Cornette appears at some point. Um, but he beats the crap out of Tommy Dreamer, which, first of all, I just want to say Jerry Lawler on WWE couldn't beat a like inflatable doll laying stationary. Like
Yes, at this point, yes. Yeah.
he's horrid at wrestling at this point in his career when we're watching.
Yeah, well, at this in 1997, he's basically only being pulled out like
As a joke.
to like enhance somebody else or like as like a quick like whatever. He lasted all of 3 seconds in like the Royal Rumble, if we remember that.
It was great. And he literally was like so confused. He was like, I even do my turn yet? I don't even know. And we're like, no,
Right.
you did. It just lasted 3 seconds.
Right.
But
So
so he beats the crap out of Tommy Dreamer with a cane. He hits Tommy Dreamer so hard in the testicles that Tommy Dreamer, as it literally
mhm,
passes out from the agony. He goes, I was awakened to Jim Cornette hitting me with the tennis racket on my back. Like
right.
hit with a racket is what woke me up. He had to go to the hospital. And because they thought his testicles were going to rupture
Right.
and
They had
had
to drain them.
drain them. But if, in case anyone was concerned, I did look at him because I was like, did he ever have kids? He did. So I'm just letting you know, in case anyone was afraid,
Like
he
I
ends up
was.
making a full recovery. But what's so crazy is that in real life, Tommy married Trisha Hayes, better known as Beulah McGillicuddy.
I did not know that.
Yes. So they get married and they have twin girls together. I think their names are like Brittany and something. But they have twin girls together, and guess what? They're still married to this day.
Are they really? I love
Yeah.
that.
They were married in like 2002 or something.
Oh, I
Still
love
married
that.
to this day. Love that. But uh Jerry the King, or yes. So Tommy Dreamer is like Jerry the King Lawler coming to ECW was so it made the fans so angry. It was like when Eric Bischoff went to WWE, which I have not yet seen, and I
You won't until like
will.
2002. Yeah.
Okay.
2002, 2003.
But it was like they were like, how dare Jerry show his face at an ECW match? So the fans are like enraged. It was so crazy. But um Tommy says like Jerry went on to like apologize later because Jerry says like he's like I just left immediately because the fans were so outraged. I was like legitimately scared for my life. Like I was legit afraid I was going to get mauled by the fans, so I just like skirt like left immediately. But then in the same breath goes on to say, "But I still think ECW stands for extremely crappy wrestling."
Right. I don't
Why
know.
even say that? Like, I don't know why that just made me so mad. Like, watching it, I was like, what did you gain from saying that? Like, that
I
just
don't
made
know.
me. You're saying you're afraid for your life because the fans are so feral and like they obviously care so much about this organization. And then you're like, yeah, well, whatever. I still think it stands for extremely crappy wrestling, whatever.
Right. And you're like, okay.
Like,
Okay. Thanks. Thanks,
like,
Jerry.
whatever. And I guess like on the show, he said Jerry says, this bingo hall might as well be built out of toilet paper because it's filled with nothing but shit.
Yeah. Yeah. What a guy. What a guy.
But
What a bold move to say to the Philadelphia audience.
like that is crazy. That
Mm-hmm.
is so crazy. So people were outraged. Now it randomly jumps into, and you know this got me. It was like suddenly they're playing like CSI investigator music, and Tommy Dreamer says that there was potentially a mole at ECW. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, this what?
Right.
Like this just became um a mystery, a
Now
spy
now there's
mystery,
espionage. Like
espionage. I'm like, what in the? I was like, all right. I mean, I'm in. Um,
right.
so
No,
I guess
literally. I was like, ooh, this is a twist she's gonna eat up. But continue.
I and guess what I did? Full. I'm full.
Mhm.
But so Paul, as we know, had kept Todd Gordon on as a kind of figurehead when he took over ECW. And Taz says, and he's like, and I don't know if this is true, no disrespect to Todd Gordon.
I love Taz.
He
Anyway.
might, I me too. He might have been the mole. And based on the information that we know kind of sounds like he was.
Right.
But he said he was maybe helping WCW get ECW talent. Tommy's like, everyone was paranoid, and Paul was just paranoid as a natural state of being. But then everyone was really paranoid because people were just getting, like we said, like traded like Pokemon cards out of the blue.
Right.
Like people are, and you don't know what's happening. It's very confusing. Like it was just a weird time. So Tommy says ECW and WWE, or WCW and WWE, were breathing down our necks, trying to take our talent. Everyone was trying to knock us down. And Paul is very paranoid to begin with. And Paul is actually, and he goes, Paul is crazy. He broke into Todd Gordon's phone and played him all the messages of all the guys calling. So he says, me and Taz were at Paul's house and Paul played the whole thing. We could not believe that it was going on. It was Terry Taylor. It was Bill Alfonso. They were just talking about Great Deal Man. They're bringing us all in and they're going to do an ECW invasion at WCW, which is crazy. So they're like all doing all these negotiations behind Paul's back.
Right.
Without telling any of the wrestlers that are involved, which is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
They're just gonna like, what are you gonna do? Like, you're just like going to the office one day and they're like, oh, by the way, today we're gonna take a little drive all the way down to Disney Studios in Florida and do a WCW invasion. Like, when were they gonna say anything? Like, it's just so crazy to me.
Right. I don't know.
Wild. But Paul says, I don't, because he just like kind of keeps it very aloof. He was like, I don't know the real story behind it. I have an idea, but you never really know the truth behind people's motivations, so why waste time trying to figure it out? And basically, Todd Gordon is fired. It is said, so Paul Heyman goes on the air and says that Todd Gordon had put in his resignation because he has kids and he has a busy schedule and he just, whatever.
Couldn't do the job anymore. Couldn't do the time commitments,
which,
or whatever.
Is nice of him to say. But I thought this was kind of a dig a little bit when he says, and he knows that I will continue on his vision of ECW. And the way he leaned into his, I almost thought he was like, this was yours. And it's actually been my vision for so long that's making it so successful. But like, I got it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because like everything Paul Heyman says has like a little subtext.
Peppa, yeah.
Yeah, a little Peppa. So Fonzie, because he was also on the calls, was also going to get fired, but he has an amazing match with Beulah, and it saves his job.
Right.
And everyone's like, we didn't really want to see Alfonso go. Like, it was kind of sad, whatever. But then he has this crazy match with Beulah, and we were like, guess we got to keep that guy.
Right.
Because Paul literally says it was 5 of the most intense minutes in ECW. They beat the crap out of each other. Right. And objectively, she's not a wrestler, and he is a retired referee. Like, right. And they had an insane, amazing fight.
Right. Paul's like, if you were to ask me, like, name 5 of like the hardest hitting moments of ECW, he's like, that's up there. Which is saying something, because there's a lot of stuff that happens.
I mean, the hardest hitting is like every match in ECW is like the hardest hitting match you've ever seen in wrestling in your whole life. So the 5 of those, that's crazy. Mm-hmm. But there's literally one part where like Alfonso is like upside down against the ring pole.
He's Beulah tied to lays the tree up a chair. Of woe. Upside down? Yeah, that's what it's
called?
Yeah, tied to the tree of woe.
The tree of woe.
Yeah.
I learn something new every day on this show. That was our goal. So well done. Tree of woe. So Fonzie's tied up in the tree of woe, and Beulah lays the chair up against his head. Then she runs and like
drop kicks him.
Drop kicks the chair.
Yeah.
Right in the face. Beulah, Miss Beulah. And then I was watching this and I was like, that's Tommy Dreamer's wife. That is Tommy Dreamer's wife. They have two daughters. And I just love to see it.
Absolutely bonkers. I will say like that like drop kick move. Our VD does one. He calls it the Van Daminator. He jumps from the top rope. So the person will be in the corner on the floor, in one of the corners. He'll climb the corner that is what is closest? Opposite, but not like opposite, like diagonally opposite, like
like
that
across,
way,
sort of. Okay,
and
okay,
he'll jump off the top rope like as he's midair, place the chair underneath his 2 feet and
No,
then drop kick them in the face. So
no,
that so that the chair is just
no,
it's face chair, Rob Van Dam's feet. It's amazing. It's truly
no.
spectacular. He calls it the Van Daminator. It's amazing.
Wow. Well, I love the name of that, and also that is literally crazy. It's like he's surfing or doing, you know what I mean? Because
Right.
he puts the chair under and he
Hmm.
flies.
He's like skateboarding.
Yes. Also, I will say Rob Van Dam he can jump so far. It's wild. There's like one clip at one point he like jumps off the ring and like does a flip like into like the fourth row of like the
Yeah.
audience. Like
He's
he is
his
crazy.
legs are ridiculously strong. Like
Well, you can tell.
he's just a freak athlete. And
Yeah.
mind you, he's just stoned this entire time. So that's
I
like
know. Even in his
that's
interview, he was like this.
and you get it. And you get it.
I do. And I just this is a whole other topic for a whole other maybe never, but I like it is always mind-blowing to me people who can function that well, like
Right.
that high. Cause like or that stoned. Like doing a match and you're that I can barely tie my shoes. Like
Right.
I wild. Anyway, whole other thing. So in this time, so Todd Gordon is gone, and even though he was just a figurehead, it was like a little bit of a tumultuous time for them. They were like nervous. The wrestlers were feeling uneasy, and I believe it's Leaf Cassidy or Al Snow who says Paul Heyman took everyone in the palm of his hand with those speeches and marched everybody right through the valley of the shadow of darkness and right through hell and back, and we went merrily along with him and didn't miss a beat. Um, Bubba Ray Dudley starts handling the everyday running of all the things going on outside of the ring and apparently like embraces the opportunity. I guess like he was out to eat with Paul and other wrestlers and they were trying to figure out what they were going to do. And Bubba Ray, I guess, has a background in business or something and is like, I'll do it. Like I can figure it out. And he starts handling so many things. And this is kind of when we get into like all the other duties that the wrestlers had.
Hmm.
So like Taz has a lot of us had other duties besides just being wrestlers. He designed all the logos and the merchandise.
Yeah, I love that. I love that little
I
fun
love
fact.
that because he's just such a big man, and then he's also like
Little
charming.
arty, little
I
artsy
know, like
fartsy. I love it.
I, and he came up like they showed like some of his stuff, and it was so amazing. Like
Right.
it was so great. And he goes, I don't have an art background. I just kind of had like a knack for doing it and just did it. And Paul just let me do it, and
Yeah,
it all worked
that was
out.
the end. Yeah. And he's like, merch was like a big deal. He's like, it was like, you still see, like, I'm telling you, you walk around Philadelphia, you still see those t-shirts. It's not like they just came and went. Like, these people are ride or dies. So
Yeah,
like it's pretty cool that like you can still see his handiwork just floating around.
floating around. And I, out of curiosity, looked last night about like just out of curiosity what shirts are available. And like there's a lot of reprints, obviously, of old designs that you can get,
Hmm.
for nothing. And then on eBay for like an authentic like 90s ECW shirts, like $500 or
Yeah,
like
I believe that.
$350. Like it's crazy. Like, and they'll be like worn 8 times. Like they're so
Right.
specific about like what it is. So really, really cool. And then they were saying like everyone seemed to put the company well above their own personal interests. I love this fact. So I guess Stevie Richards was doing like phone stuff, like he was like ticket sales,
Right.
whatever, but his voice is so distinct. He was like, but I didn't want people to know that it was me answering the phone, taking like their phone orders for stuff.
Right.
So my fake office name was Lloyd Van Buren,
I love that.
which is
It
ridiculous
sounds like
and
a cartoon
amazing.
character. Yeah.
It does. Like to me, that sounds more like a wrestler than Stevie Richards.
Right.
Like Stevie Richards sounds like he works at the office, and Lloyd Van Buren sounds like a douchey wrestler.
Amazing. No, yeah,
Like,
true. Yeah, you're not wrong.
yeah. Um.
I loved that when they go into like the people like shipping the merch, which was like Devon, Tommy, and
Mhm.
Nunzio. He's like people never really understood like if you went and like purchased a t-shirt from us, it was one of us packaging your order, which
Which
is
is crazy.
that's so wild because it's so not the case. And like it just what a cool fun fact. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like imagine you get an Orville Peck shirt and Orville Peck packed it.
I'd die.
I
I'd never
die.
wear it.
I
Yeah.
would literally die. And like I think it's cool because this documentary came out in 2004. So obviously a lot more ECW shirts and merch were probably still in circulation at that point. Not that they're really not now, but like watching this documentary and realizing that you have a shirt, like finding this out that you have a shirt that like Tommy Dreamer might have packed for you, and you're like,
right,
finding this out like time
after
later.
the fact. Yeah,
like I just find that so amazing. The Taz also ran the ECW School of Pro Wrestling, and it was just called the House of Hardcore.
Yeah.
This is wild. He said, I'm not trying to like be over dramatic, but there were probably like hundreds of applicants and only 3 or 4 people graduated.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. I really thought I guess I should have looked this up. I wish they had gone into who the 3 or 4
I tried looking it
graduates
up.
were.
It
Oh,
didn't
did you?
have too much. Like I couldn't
I
like
knew.
actually like find them. Me too, honestly.
Because they are on another plane of
Right.
existence. How is that even a real thing?
Mm-hmm.
So crazy. But Dawn Marie says it was a bunch of young, hungry, talented wrestlers that wanted to succeed, and if we didn't grow together, we were gonna fall apart. And yeah, Devon Dudley says it was like family. We were also happy to be working. We wanted each other to succeed. We trusted the direction it was going in, and every night was like WrestleMania to us.
Right.
Every
night was the show of shows. Like,
yeah. Bubba Ray says Paul was taken oh sorry. I can't read my handwriting.
What is this about Paul being such a good speaker that he was like brainwashing
He
people?
was a talker. It looks like a taken, but it's okay, sorry. Bubba Ray says Paul was a talker. He always made it seem like amazing things were going to happen, and they always did, but he was also a guy that could always make it seem like the grass was greener. And this is when Al Snow said it was like a cult. Like people would do anything for Paul, like anything. And Bubba Ray is like, he brainwashed a lot of guys, but he did what he had to do to get his wrestlers to perform at the level they needed to perform at. So like Spike Dudley says Paul left it up to us to develop our characters and our storyline.
Right.
So like you just kind of had like complete freedom. And Taz says Paul would set up his desk smack in the middle of whatever locker room they were at. So he was always accessible to everyone on the roster for ideas, for conversation. He was just always in the middle of everything, like like a spider, like in the web.
He's Queen Bee, baby. He
He
really
is Queen Bee, and they all bring the honey to him, girl. Like
literally.
That's
it. And I love that. Like I love an accessible boss. I really do. I was like, what a head of his time business practice. Like, not gonna lie. Because today we know that is just good leadership, like being accessible to your team. Back then, like
being aloof was like the thing.
That. Right.
Yeah. Like mystery, like it's just like coming from the top, but we don't really know who the top is. Right. Like a lot of that. So
lots of company memos.
Yeah, but in the vein of like Spike is saying they really just let people do their own characters. Al Snow says he could take a person and he could make the most out of their positives and camouflage their negatives to where you could not see them. And this is when we get into Al Snow having a psychotic break and this head. Let's talk about the styrofoam head. This was such an angle I would never in my wildest dreams imagine that this would work.
So Al Snow shows up in ECW right after he is let go from the WWF as Leif Cassidy.
Yeah.
Early days of Al in ECW actually shows up in the Leif Cassidy like gear.
The gear.
So the premise was like he was like losing his mind. Is the character like he was slowly but surely like going nuts. So he talks about how the bingo hall that ECW was out of was across the street from where they build the floats for the Mummers Day Parade. If you're not from Philly, look up the Mummers Day Parade. I cannot go into that for you, but he finds this head that reminds him of a conversation that he had with Mick Foley.
Of course,
about Mick Foley was just pretending like this head was like his girlfriend. So apparently Chris Candido, who was in ECW at this time, we know him in New to Wrestling as part of the Body Donnas.
Yeah.
Lobbies for Al Snow to do this promo where he's basically just talking to the head as if the head had let slip that he was injured and not allowed to wrestle. So he's basically just like, I'm like going like crazy and people aren't like really getting it. So I'll just talk to this thing as like a just kind of a I don't know. It's one of those things where you have to play to the back of the room.
Mm.
Where it's
Mm-hmm.
like if it's not reading because they're 8,000 feet away from you, like it's a little hard to be like, is this guy crazy? But
Mm-hmm.
the guy literally holding up like this head a la Hamlet and like having a conversation like is just weird and jarring and for some reason worked,
Like,
just absolutely worked. And like if there's somebody like in the wrestling business, sometimes you just get given a gift and you need to run. Like that is
you
that
just need
is
to
that is
ride
your
it.
lot and you need to ride it. And no one is a better example of that than Al Snow.
I mean, he literally says, due to the grace of God and a plastic head, I am here today. If I hadn't found that head and if I hadn't had the opportunity that Paul Heyman and ECW had given me, I really don't know where my career would have ended up. And I honestly don't. And I owe Paul to no end an amount of thanks and ECW and those fans. And it's true. It's like, if this gimmick is landing, I'm riding it straight to hell, girl. Like we are
And
taking it to the moon.
he goes back to the WWE as Al Snow, like
No,
not as Leaf Cassidy.
you're kidding.
Like, yeah, later on, like after ECW gets
That
dropped
is
out,
so
he
funny.
his career continues because of this gimmick. He gets to go do that over there, which
Girl,
is incredible. So
I think that is so funny and I'm so glad he just like embraced it because like I feel like a lot of other people would have been like, seriously, now this like me pretending this styrofoam head is my girlfriend is my thing, that's the thing, like that,
right,
like I'm sure other people would be like too quote unquote big for that, like,
right,
or above that, and he was just like, whatever, like let's just do it. And Paul was like, he ran with that thing, man. He went with it all the way.
mm-hmm.
And there's this match where, so basically, Paul says, I wanted to do a rave party effect with one of our characters. I think it's hysterical and also brilliant that he chose this one. But
Right,
he goes, I found some styrofoam head distributors because those are things. Um, and we spent a fortune buying styrofoam heads, and I had two friends of mine who would drive U-Haul trucks to all the events with thousands of styrofoam heads, and they would hand them out before Al Snow went on stage, and then they would strobe the lights. So then it's all these heads like going crazy and they
right.
strobe the lights and whatever, and then there's this match, and it happened to be in Asbury Park, by the way, at Convention Hall.
Love that.
um Love, where this is in 1998, where everyone in the crowd, I guess like Al Snow wins a match and they all throw their styrofoam heads into the ring.
Right.
And Al Snow, he goes, not to be like,
No pun
punny about
intended.
it. Yeah, no pun intended, but it looked like I was just rolling around in snow and it's just a bunch of white styrofoam
Styrofoam
heads.
heads.
I
Yeah.
think that is so amazing and
It's brilliant.
hysterical. It's
It
ridiculous.
it's
It's
brilliant,
so
and that like it really
ridiculous.
shows like if you are just like committed to the bit, like you can get anything. You can get anything over. If you are like good enough and you commit hard enough, like
If you're committed to the bit will commit to you. That's what I'm
to the
saying.
moon, baby, to the
I'm
moon.
the moon, the stars, all the way beyond. Like I love it. So then we jump to Tommy Dreamer talking about we were surviving on syndication, we were surviving on word of mouth, and we were surviving off the internet. They had internet conventions called CyberSlam where fans would do Q&A with wrestlers, live internet feeds of the matches. And it was very ahead of its time, like doing
Right,
live streaming in the 90s, in like the late 90s. Like
right.
I feel like live streaming is more a thing like
Today.
now,
Right,
30 years later, like
right. And like
I mean reaching like a pinnacle, like, so
mhm.
for it to be a thing then, that's crazy.
Right. And like it shows just like the foresight of Paul Heyman on like so many fronts that
Hmm.
it's not just like he calls ECW like the Nirvana of wrestling, like
Right.
come in, like shake it up. It coincides with the internet like really becoming like a household thing in the late
Right.
90s. That's when like uh the price of computers goes down and is now a something that everybody can buy.
in your house. Yeah.
Everybody just like ends up having one in their home. So like to have the foresight to be like, no, that's where the world's going, we have to get on there, is like it's amazing. It's amazing because like
it's really crazy.
And I'm sure he didn't even know, because how could you, just like what the internet was going to do for society as a whole. Like how
No,
crazy, like how
it's
crazy.
so wild. I mean, and objectively, like the internet, what a crazy thing. I remember being young, not to like age ourselves, but like I remember being young and my mom, who works on like 3 different computers now, was like so nervous about, she thought YouTube was like a scam site. And
Right.
like we weren't allowed to go on YouTube because it was like a
Mm-hmm.
thing. Or like she was so nervous about like websites we went on because she
Mm-hmm.
didn't understand like what the internet was all about.
Right.
And like now that's her job, is like working at home like on the internet. It's just so
Mm-hmm.
wild. But so to have that foresight when people were of that generation were so suspicious, like
Right.
just fascinating. But this is interesting because all of the wrestlers of ECW are talking about how they were just like smoking WCW. They were like, we could have competed with WCW. We were fully in the number 2 spot under WWE. And then here comes Eric Bischoff with his little two
His two
cents
cents.
nobody asked for, which I guess somebody did because he's in the documentary. Someone obviously asked him to be there. But he said, I have no idea how they could possibly think that. Like, they didn't even come close to us. Like, it's like the way he is so condescending. And
Yeah.
again, I'm not going to start ripping into him again, but it's just like, he's like, they didn't have the audience wasn't even close, the setup. I mean, we were
He's like,
like
any
in
way you like look at it, like it
the
wasn't it. And you're just
stats.
like, okay. Okay.
But I just like, I don't know, again, and we've talked about this a million times, so I'll just mention it briefly. It's like you have all of this money and they have no money and they're still competing with you on a very serious level, and that should like mean something. Like
Be
that
of
means
concern to
something.
you, like,
Yes.
and not for nothing, but like they're clearly doing something right if you're looking at them and being like, I
Hmm.
want that, I'll
And
take that
taking
one.
things from it. It's so true. It's like, if you don't care about me, why
Hmm.
are you taking things from me?
And then right after Bischoff, they cut to Jericho and they go like, everybody like wanted to act like they were like holier than thou as far as like ECW, like they weren't paying attention. But he's like,
Mm-hmm.
everybody had their eyes on ECW. Everybody knew what they were doing. They knew like of the company. They knew that they were changing the game. Everybody had their eyes on them because it's like at this point it's the equivalent of like, if you want to get rich, like follow Nancy Pelosi's like stocks. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
you want to know what's going on with wrestling, watch ECW, because
Yep.
that's the direction of wrestling, and like everyone was paying attention to it. Like,
Yep. I mean,
uh,
that they had their fingers on the pulse. They were the trendsetters.
right.
It was like when it's almost like when a small like fashion brand does like some type of like different kind of garment, and then suddenly all like the major fashion houses are doing that garment.
Right.
It's like,
Correct. Mm-hmm.
we get the ideas from the little creative, not little, but like the smaller scale creatives, and
Right.
then we like maximize it on like a bigger scale.
Right.
But yeah, even Paul, like this cracks me because Paul just always is like just smiling. He's just like, to this day, Eric Bischoff actually believes he created some of the ideas that were really created in a little bingo hall in Philly.
Yeah.
Like he is that delusional that he believes that.
Right.
And Vince at least, like I said, admits it. He's like, yeah, I mean, they obviously had something special, but then he also says, but I was never like, they were never a threat to me. The
Right.
only time he admits like he was like nervous was when they get on national television.
Right.
Yeah, that's like, if they had just whatever. Um, but Paul says like the Attitude Era came from ECW Revolution, and no one will ever be able to deny that. It's just the truth. And Mick Foley says like, I believe there's some truth to that. Like I
Right.
believe like a lot of people were looking at ECW for ideas for that style, for the Attitude Era. And he said, when I first came to ECW, chance of you sold out or ECW when I did anything hardcore.
Right.
So like he would do something crazy and people would start chanting ECW because they know where that style came from. And he says, I believe had it not been for ECW, you would have never gotten the WWE attitude.
Correct. I
And then
agree.
Vince says, well, we always had attitude. This is so funny. It was just more verbal than physical.
Right.
Vince.
No. No.
Okay.
No. We know what it is. We know what it
Yeah.
is.
Vince.
But It's fine.
Yeah. So then Bam Bam Bigelow comes to ECW, which
The
what a
beast from the
chonk.
east. I
What a
love it.
guy. Because he's from Asbury Park, yes.
Yes, he's from Asbury Park.
I love that guy. He has a match with Taz and Asbury. This is wild. So obviously this is Bam Bam Bigelow's hometown. Go off. They have a match. And basically what happens is Bam Bam Bigelow jumps on Taz and they land and go through the ring.
Right.
Which they didn't clarify, but this was intentional or not intentional.
I'm assuming intentional because
I'm assuming intentional too.
You have to like make the
hole.
Yeah.
Right. Because I was like, if that was not intentional, that's really scary.
I was like, there's a problem with that ring.
Somebody get OSHA in here. This is not safe for work.
LOL.
But they go through the ring. There's like minutes go by. The fans are on their feet, craning their neck, trying to see what's going on, like whatever. And Taz, like, meanwhile, Bam Bam Bigelow, who is a humongous man, is just on top of me. Like, it was just the mat, my body, and Bam Bam Bigelow on top of me.
Right.
So Bam Bam crawls out first. He's kind of like delirious, whatever. And, you know, Taz is still not coming up. So Bam Bam just reaches in the hole, yanks Taz out, covers him, wins.
Right. He wins the TV title, which at that point, like, Taz was pretty like unstoppable as far as ECW goes. So it was like it was a big deal. And Paul Heyman like gives Taz like kudos. Like he's like he lost graciously. And then comes back and has like a promo where he's like, well, now I'm even, you know, more motivated. Like, which we live for. We love that. And it goes to show like Paul understood the like adage is like you can lose, but it has to mean something.
Yes.
You can't just like lose all of the time for the sake of just like bettering other people or whatever without losing your own stock. Whereas like if Taz lost, which he doesn't normally do, but he gets to come back and be like, oh, well, now I'm coming after you harder, faster, like better, stronger. Like, you know what I mean? So like Paul understood that. Like, it's just like such a great wrestling mind. I don't want to blow his head up too much, but still.
Yeah. I mean, we know.
We know.
But this gets into the FTW title.
Love that.
That Taz creates. Basically he's so enraged, he like really feeds into how like angry, he lets the anger motivate him, and he basically comes out one day and is like, I don't need like the TV title, like whatever, I already have a title.
So he was actually trying to go after the ECW like world heavyweight
championship. Okay,
the big one. So Shane Douglas had it and was injured, and they weren't letting like Taz like go after it. So he was big myth.
I would be.
And he's like, you know what? I got my own belt. Don't worry about it. And he's so basically he just like he's so mad that he just like makes his own belt and it's just like, I'm just gonna call myself the world champion. Doesn't matter. Which so is great. Crazy. I love that.
And I love the juxtaposition or like the read of like it's, you know, he was going after the world championship, and then the title that he ends up embodying is the F the world championship, which also is like, on one hand, it's like it's almost like a
play
like a words? Verbal like play on words. Thank you, where it's like F the world, but also just F the world championship. Right. Like I don't need your world championship. It's so genius. It's just so subtle and so good, and I just love it so much. And they just like let him have a title. They're just like, yep, that's him.
And I love it. I love that title, first of all, is still around. It's still around and is being like it is held by his son Hook, and is being contested like today in AEW. Like it's still not a like sanctioned title. It is still just like a rogue championship that belongs to the Taz family, but like it's on TV. It's they have title matches for it. Like
I love it.
By all means, it's still very much a relevant title.
I love it so much. And I know we've said this before, but the fact that I can't imagine that feeling of like you created this title and now your son has it. Right. Like I just feel like that feels so good in my spirit.
Yeah, it's got to be cool because he's also like doing commentary like for his son's like matches sometimes. Like what a time.
So good. There were at ECW, there were only ever 2 people to hold the title. I'm just mentioning this because I think this is funny. There were only ever 2 people to hold that title, and it's Taz and Sabu. But because Taz's name was literally engraved on the title, Sabu just like takes a like piece of like white tape and like
Just
tapes
like
over it and just writes like
Sabu.
Sabu in like blue
And
marker.
Sharpie, yeah.
It's so funny. Then we get into the Dudleys and like how kind of like the Dudleys became like the heart and soul of ECW and like the textbook definition of a heel.
Oh,
Like
so
I
bad.
have never in my life, I'm literally getting chills, have never in my life heard some of the things that they said. And I know we only got like a tidbit of the things that they said and
Yeah,
did.
they were heinous. They were absolutely heinous.
And Paul says people would come just to watch them get beat up because people hated them so much.
Right.
I
Yeah.
cannot imagine. And I know we talk about this all the time, how like being a heel is like must be so thrilling and fun and free and
Mm-hmm.
whatever. But also at the same time, like living in the being such a heel that you're like with ECW fans who are so crazy, like you're almost like in the constant threat of death for like your entire career, which is so
Yeah.
crazy.
But they relished it. Like they were
Lived
like,
for it,
yeah,
lived
they were having like such a great time. Like you can like when they talk about it, they're like, oh, we would say anything. We would say
anything,
literally,
girl.
and it did not matter. Like
They
I was
cracked
like,
me
we were
up.
gonna say anything we needed to say to get them pissed off at us. Like,
And they were as in their interviews, they're just so like level-headed and like quote unquote normal, whatever that means. Like, you know what I mean?
right.
Like you just
Mm.
don't think that because I did not know really anything about the Dudley Boys other than the little things that I know from our
Mm-hmm.
conversations. So being like they were the biggest heels, but
Right.
they seem so nice, like in real
Right.
life. But
Right.
obviously they're characters. But Devon says we were the most hated tag team in ECW. We were taking on people left and right. Like they were fighting fans, they were fighting
Mm-hmm.
refs, they were fighting like literally everyone. And their iconic move becomes the flaming table,
Yeah.
which is so crazy. So for
Mm-hmm.
those of you who are like me, hashtag new to wrestling, they basically obviously we know ECW loves to use a table. They broke I more tables than anyone I've ever seen in my whole life.
Specifically the Dudleys, yes.
Specifically the Dudleys. And basically what they would do is they'd say who was it? Say, Bubba, get the tables.
Mm-hmm. Devon,
So
get the tables.
Devon, get the tables. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
it's gotta be one of them. But Devon, get the tables. And so you get the table. Sometimes there'd be thumbtacks on it. Sometimes there'd be barbed wire on it. You never
Mm-hmm.
know. But what you did know is that they were going to light it to flame and then smash you into it. And
Yeah, usually with the 3D, which is the Dudley Death Drop, is their finisher, which is like Bubba picks them up and does like a flapjack, and while Devon on the other end does the cutter part of the move.
I will say anytime they did it in these clips, it was the cleanest.
They're first of all, the Dudleys are go on to be, I think, the most decorated tag team in wrestling history. They have
Mm.
won more world tag team champions in more promotions than anybody. They were the ECW tag team champions. They were a one-time WCW tag team champion when they were all in one place.
Mm-hmm.
I think they were like an 8-time like WWE tag team champions. They were
Oh
tag team
my
champions
God.
in Impact. Um, Bubba Ray had a good singles run in TNA where he was the world champion at one point. They are just like as far as like tag team goes, they are like in the upper echelon of like people that have like achieved the most in wrestling. So
I
like,
love that.
and it's a testament to like how good they were even back then.
I mean, it felt like, and again, I only saw like little clips from the documentary, but it literally felt like they were just so in tune. It was like a sixth sense. Like when one moves, like you just know what they're gonna
Mm-hmm.
do. Like it was so seamless. Like they just knew each other so well, and like it
Mm-hmm.
just so crazy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But they were like, we incited riots. We stirred people up so badly. They get into some of the things they say to the crowd. One I am not going to say because I definitely don't want to say, but like
That's fair.
they use a slur against someone in the front row who's wearing a Hawaiian shirt that didn't need to be said, but you know, whenever
Right.
they again, they literally Bubba Ray at one point goes, "We were disgusting."
Right.
Disgusting. But it literally at one point he goes, "Oh, look over here. We got a mom who taught her daughter how to suck."
Yeah, I believe it. They said horrible things on night in, night out.
I literally was like, "Whoo!" And like objectively
hilarious. Sorry.
hilarious.
So
I'm
funny.
sorry.
I'm sorry. I know it's bad. I know it's 2024 and we shouldn't, but it's so funny. I can't.
It's so funny.
It's so funny.
I was like spit take full on. I was dead because who says that off the rip? And then I thought maybe it was just a woman standing there, but then they go to the crowd and it's legit a mother and daughter standing there, and the daughter was maybe like 12, and he said like the mom.
It's so heinous. They're horrible.
Oh my god! And then
anything. They'd say anything
because then they go into the crowd. They're like, he starts fighting with the guy, and then he's next to the mom and the daughter, and she's clutching her like so protectively, and the mom spits in Bubba Ray Dudley's face. He spits back in her face.
Yeah.
I was aghast. I was flat. I was shook.
Yeah. They did not care.
Out of breath.
Yeah.
He said, no. He said, "Oh, you want to spit in my face? Right. I got you, bitch." I really
amazing. Just truly spectacular. like
that is so wild.
So out of fans, pocket. So out of pocket.
Oh my god. And on that note, that is going to be the end of part 2.
That is the end of part 2.
So we're gonna leave you with a lot of things to think about. Spitting things, tables,
flaming tables, the Dudleys,
barbed wire,
Tommy Dreamer's mangled testicles.
Yeah, truly. And then truly thrilling. And then next week we'll get into part 3, which is when we start to actually, unfortunately, talk about the fall of ECW, which is really heartbreaking because it just, there's so many things that, you know, you have to wonder if like, oh, if this had happened, if this had been a little different, if this had happened literally like a day later or like earlier.
Just remember what Paul said in his Hall of Fame speech, though. If you think the spirit of ECW died in 2001, you know what you can do.
I love that. And on that thrilling note, anything else?
No, be on the lookout for the Barely Legal episode whenever we put that out. You'll see it coming, don't worry. And yeah, just stay tuned for the next New to Wrestling.
Yeah, we will see you there.
Bye.
Bye.